Yes, it's John G. Sutton. Tales from the Jails. Thank you for watching this site. Hope you like and subscribe and all the rest of it. We'll talk today a little bit about ethnic minority groups in prison during the 1970s and 80s when I worked at Strange Ways and Wormwood Scrubs. One of the groups, they did form themselves into groups, but not as specifically as they do in America. Apparently in America, if you're a standard white ethnic, that's your ethnicity, then you're in the white groups. Sean Atwood's book, Hard Time, I highly recommend you read that. That discusses in detail about how you're segregated into groups when you're in the prison. They all fight each other and kill each other and slash out. It's crazy. I mean, but in the British prisons, there was a little bit more understanding. Generally speaking, of course, certain groups decided that they would kind of separate themselves. When I was at the Scrubs, it was mainly uh, the West Indians that were separating themselves, and they used to shout abuse at you. Now, I'm not a racist. I couldn't care less. What do I care? I mean, you're going to get locked up. It don't matter who you are. I'm going to lock you up. You're going to get locked up. And I'm not going to be nasty about it. No point. No point for you. No point for me. It's not going to teach you anything. All you're going to give me some aggro, so I'm not bothered. But they didn't seem to see it like that, call me nasty names. Or they thought they were nasty names. I didn't understand them. I've previously discussed this here and now found that it's an extremely revolting application of the name. Call me Rastclat, Bambaclat, and all this, that, and the other. I didn't know what it was. So I didn't engage them in any kind of aggression because there was no point. To me, they were speaking a foreign language. So let them get on with it. You know, I mean, they'll still be behind bars. I mean, I've been out a long time, you know. Kind of wrote my own ticket, yeah. Anyway, so ethnic minority groups at the Scrubs, yes, it was evident then, because back in the 1970s, 75, 76, when I was there were quite a considerable number of West Indians. There was a lot of black inmates in there, and they were mainly in for drugs and violence. You know, not so much thieving, robbing, and burglary. That wasn't their thing, or armed robbery. No, it was basic stuff. I mean, each ethnic group has their own kind of thing. You know. The Gypsies, they were an ethnic group, you know, and they stuck together, absolutely. I've previously told you I tried to help the Gypsies, or specifically two young, well, relatively young Gypsy adult males who were on Sea Wing, who'd been murdering people, but doing so on instructions. They didn't set out there to vengefully kill people. They were doing it because they were told to do it by the leader of their gang, you know, the Gypsy leaders, you know. And I did learn some Gypsy language when I was in there. I've mentioned this before. Try it if you come across a Gypsy. You say Chevy Anya Jigger, Festa Jalan Mudarag. You practice that. It means get behind your door, my friend. The boss is coming. Seriously, yeah. I used that on some Gypsies when I was in Strange Ways. When I went back to Strange Ways after Wormwood Scrubs. And they look at me and say, how do you know this? You know, this is our secret language, because it's their secret language, traveller, really. It isn't any specific language. It's a conglomerate, a polyglot language, which they all throw together, but they don't speak it. And generally speaking, the Gypsies don't read and write. They're not taught how to read and write. One thing about Gypsies is, from being little children, they get a whack. So, and they get whacked all the way through, you know, all the way through growing up. Yeah, so that when it comes time for you to deal with them, they're not totally immune to pain, but might as well be, because if you just give them a slap, that's nothing. They don't register. if you're going to go into battle with the gypsies, then you're gonna seriously do it, yeah. But certainly at Wormwood Scrubs, the ethnic minority groups did form themselves there, and that really was the start of it. I believe that now in the prisons now, like Belmarsh and Parkhurst and places like this, maybe even Strangeways, I don't know, I don't go into Strangeways anymore, but forming themselves into ethnic minority groups against the system, but not only against the system, but against the other ethnic groups. So you got like a disagreement there. But in my days, there wasn't any drugs knocking around the prison. They were making hooch. I'll tell you this: the white team, the gangsters in D Wing, they made some hooch, and I didn't have any, of course. Yeah, but they were quite high on that for a while. And then somebody on D Wing got an idea to distill boot polish. Seriously, boot polish. They strained it, melted it, and strained it through a loaf of bread, strained it through the loaf of bread, and it came out neat alcohol. And there's something about this neat alcohol. When they drank it, they mixed it with something and drank it. It made them, it ruined the optic nerves. So a number of inmates actually went blind or partially blind through drinking this crazy stuff. I mean, who would do that? Yeah. I mean, well, another thing that they did as well was Brasso. You know, the liquid metal polishing stuff. They strained that through a loaf as well. There's no wonder they were seriously damaged. Somebody once gave me when I was in the military, somebody gave me a drink, meths and Coca-Cola. I said, go on, try that, John, it's good, you know. I was, what, 18, 19, and I took a little sip, and I tell you what, that's all I had. But it gave me a blinding headache across here. I wouldn't do anything like that again. I mean, my idea of having an alcoholic drink is to get a really nice bottle of single malt whiskey and have about that much in a glass and gently sip that for about 15-20 minutes, and then maybe get another one, but not a load of it, because it makes you ill. I know that. Anyway, ethnic minority groups. At Strangeways, they tended to be ridiculed by the staff. The National Front at Strangeways, they were picking on the inmates, you know, the coloured inmates, and calling them snowflake and stuff like that. It was just ridiculous. And of course, just up the road, about 2 miles, 3 miles, was the Bernard Manning Club. What's it called? The Embassy Club, the world famous Embassy Club with Bernard Manning. I was persuaded to go there one night. Oh, disgraceful like that was. He was shouting abuse at anybody who was not white, you know. And when you looked at Bernard Manning, he was hardly a role model, was he? Eh? Must have been about 25 stone. But his comedy aside, which I found offensive personally, I couldn't watch it. I had to get out of there. I just, picking on people in the audience, said to one poor lady, he said, do you know, he said, you've got eyes like a Japanese sniper. You know, what's all that about? This poor woman probably never thought she looked Japanese, you know. As far as I could see, she wasn't. But he made a point of making her life misery for about 15 minutes as part of his act. Now, if you've got to do that, you're not got much of an act, have you? Not really. He did the same jokes over and over and over again. Yeah, how he got away with it. Bernard Manning, he went to Bradford. They had a fire at Bradford football ground. I don't know if you remember this, going back about 40 odd years, and the football stand burnt down, and there was about 20 people burnt to death in the football stand. Bernard Manning, about 2 weeks after this, was at a club in Bradford, and this was his opening lines. Yeah, he said, "You're a bunch of bastards, aren't you?" He said, "You throw a barbecue." He said, "And you don't even invite me." Well, they were throwing things at him. They had to get him off the stage. No wonder. I mean, he was always into persecuting ethnic minority groups. Bernard Manning opened at one night. It was Christmas do for the police in the town of Lee. And they used to have a police club. All the police stations used to have a police club, you know, where the police officers would go in and get themselves necked up after with the booze after the shift and what have you. But they had a club with a proper stage, and Bernard Manning was the act this year, and sat at the front table was the chief superintendent, who was the head of police for the Lee and Wigan area. And Bernard Manning came on, and the chief superintendent sat next to his wife, and Bernard Manning, he just walked on straight on, and said to this lady at the front, who was the chief superintendent's wife, he says, "Let me have a look at them." He said, "What enormous great tits," she said to the chief superintendent. He said, "You dropped a bit lucky there, haven't you? Eh? Seen the size of them tits?" Well, that was it. The chief superintendent stood up and said, "Get him off the stage. Get him off." And the club steward had to take Bernard Manning off the stage. He was thrown off. He lasted about 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. I don't suppose Bernard Manning would be bothered, because he still get paid. But anyway, that's the problem with racism. It just knows no boundaries. But in the prisons, yeah, it was prevalent at strange ways because of the National Front, who would create problems for the ethnic minority groups just simply because of their bigotry. Now, in these Tales from the Jails, it's common for me to do a little finish with this, so I'm going to... Yes, folks, it's the Song Dinger. And I'm going to do a song made famous by Gracie Fields. It's not much of a song, it's more of a monologue. But it struck me as being amusing, so bear with me whilst I tell you the story of the biggest aspidestra in the world. For years we had an aspidestra in a flower pot, on a whatnot near the hat stand in the hall. Didn't seem to grow till one day our brother Joe had a notion that he'd make it strong and tall. So he crossed it with an acorn from an oak tree, and he planted it against the garden wall. It shot up like a rocket till it nearly touched the sky. It's the biggest aspidestra in the world. We couldn't see the top of it, it got so blooming high. It's the biggest aspidestra in the world. When father's had a skinful at his pub, the bunch of grapes, he doesn't go in fighting mad and getting into scrapes. You'll find him in his bearskin playing Tarzan of the Apes up the biggest aspidestra in the world. We have to get it watered by the local fire brigade, so they put water rates up £0.50. The roots stuff up the drains, grow all along the country lanes, and they came up 1/2 mile outside the town. Once we hired the Crystal Palace for a hothouse, but a jealous rival went and burnt it down. The tomcats and the moggies love to spend their evenings out up the biggest aspidestra in the world. They all began meowing when the buds began to sprout up the biggest aspidestra in the world. The dogs line up for miles and miles, a funny sight to see. They sniff around for hours on end and wag their tails with glee. So I've had to put a notice up to say it's not a tree, it's the biggest aspidestra in the world. It's getting warm and weary, and its leaves are turning grey. It's the oldest aspidestra in the world. So we water it with half a pint of Guinness every day. It's the stoutest aspidestra in the world. The Borough Council told us that we've got to chop it down. It interferes with aeroplanes that fly above the town. So we sold it to a woodyard for a lousy £0.50. It's the biggest aspidestra in the world. Well, there you go. Gracie Fields. She was a comedian, you know. I think she was a comedian. She thought she was a singer. Anyway, that's it. Tales from the Jails today. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, by the way, Sean Atwood contacted me. It won't be long now before he publishes the interview that we did. Thank you very much. You can have a look at his thing. His podcast on YouTube is called True Crime Sean Atwood. All right, thank you.